my name is Tiffany and this is my channel, Who's Your Handmade. Thank you so much for stopping by today. In today's video, we are doing a sew with me. We're gonna sew a little dress for Project Dress a Girl. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around. Before we jump into this sew with me, I wanna talk about this pattern real quick. This is for Project Dress a Girl, which is an effort that's going on here in the month of September, put on by Madi Sews. I'm not going to go into a bunch of the details. By now you probably know everything you need to know, and if you do not know, I will link Madi's introduction video down below for you, so that'll get that out of the way so we don't have to repeat it here for you. Today I do want to do a sew with me the way I like to do my Project Dress a Girl vlogging tour videos, is to sew a little dress with you. So hopefully you'll enjoy this sew with me. We're doing a new dress this year. It's called the Oliver and S popover dress, sundress. This is a free pattern, completely free pattern. I'll link it down below. Costs you absolutely nothing, and you get a PDF pattern and the instructions. And this is a really fun, very simple sundress. It does have ties there at the shoulders that satisfy the requirements for no buttons or closures for Project Dress a Girl, and it's really just very simple. It took hardly any time at all to sew this up, even with walking you guys through the steps as we're going to do here in the rest of the video. So I do want to go over what you need for this project. You're of course going to need your cotton fabric. I'm using 100% cotton here from Hobby Lobby. Thought that was really bright and cheery. You're going to need some pockets. Project Dress a Girl recommends at least one, and I like to add 2 to my dresses. So I've got 2 pre-made pockets here. Very simple, just self-drafted rectangle and then sewed up those pockets. You're going to need some coordinating fabric for the yoke piece that goes up here along the front and the back. So I'm going to use this pretty mustardy color cotton, again 100% cotton, to match there. And then you have the choice of either making your own bias binding for the straps, or I'm going to use purchased bias binding. So this is a little bit faster, right, than having to make your own. Also saves you a little bit on your fabric. You don't need as much fabric as the pattern is going to call for. If you do want to make your own bias binding and you've never done that before, the pattern is going to walk you through it. So don't worry if you don't want to buy your own binding, or if you don't have access to this pre-made bias binding that we can get in the store here in the US. Okay, and that's all you need. It's very simple. Like I said, the steps are going to be simple. We're going to go through the pattern together. So what I've done is printed out this pattern, and we're just going to walk through it together as we go through the sew with me. I do want to mention real quick that the sizing on this pattern only goes from 2 through 8. So if you were looking for a size for an older girl, more like a teenager, preteen, this is probably not the pattern for you. I've cut out the size 7 and it looks to be about like a medium size. So we will look at the dress together when we get done, but let's get to sewing. Okay, let's get ready to make this little dress for Project Dress a Girl. Again, we're making the popover sundress by Oliver and S. I've got the instructions right here with me. This is a free pattern again, like I said at the beginning of the video, so definitely avail yourself of this really neat pattern. I've already cut out all my pattern pieces here before we start sewing. You need a front and a back, and they look the same. It is the same pattern piece. So I've got a front and a back. I have 2 pockets, and then these are your yoke pieces. You need to cut 2 of those, and I am using a pre-made purchased bias binding for this project. I didn't want to have to make some of my own, so that's all you need for this little dress. So let's get to sewing. Before we get into the sewing of the pattern, I wanted to talk to you guys about these pockets. I've pre-made these here for our video today, but they're very simple. Essentially, I just self-drafted a rectangle, cut 4 of those out of this coordinating fabric, and I've sewed 2 pieces of that fabric right sides together, and then I've sewn all the way around it, leaving a hole here at the bottom for turning, and then I've turned them right side out and then pressed them really well. So now I'm going to attach those here to the front of this little dress. And how I like to do that is to just lay out my front dress piece on my mat here with the grids, and then I kind of try to use the grids and a little ruler here to just kind of eyeball it and see how close I can get to perfect. I do want to make sure that my opening is down here at the bottom. You can see that on both sides there. I have those at the bottom so that when I sew, you know, around the sides, I will catch that and close that opening there. So I'm going to do that process here. Also wanted to mention my technique for putting pockets on nowadays is using this steam seam too. This stuff is like magic. I've talked about it before. I've done a whole video on it actually, but I do not pin my pockets on any longer. I use this double-sided tape to help them stay. So I'll show you here as I do the process, and probably fast forward it a little bit. So if you want more information on this stuff, I'll try to link that video down below for you where I talk about this steam seam in more detail, and of course I will link it down below if I can find it on Amazon. Okay, let's attach these pockets. Let's move on to step number 1. Now that we have the pockets on, we're going to be attaching these yokes to our dress pieces. So you need to turn your fabric over so that the wrong side, here's my right side, this is the wrong side up, and then take your yoke fabric. If your fabric has a right and wrong side, you want to lay your right side down against the wrong side of this fabric. My yoke does not have a clear right and wrong, so I'm just gonna lay this up here, and you're gonna pin this here, and then we're gonna sew it at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and we're gonna do that to both the front. This is the front with my pockets stitched on it, and then we're gonna do it to the back as well. On the instructions, they show you how to do a full piece at a time. I'm gonna do them simultaneously, so you'll see me do it a little bit differently than the instructions tell you to do. They say to, you know, finish four steps on this side and then go back and do 4 steps on this side. I'm going to do them at the same time to try to hopefully save some time. Are the yokes that we just sewn on, so we need to do some pressing now. First thing we want to do is press them flat like this to set our seams. And then we want to press the seam allowance up towards the yoke. So I'm gonna do it like so. Kind of have to trust the process on this here. So we're gonna fold this over a 1/2 inch and then we're gonna top stitch it so that it encloses this seam. So just trust the process here. Let's do this side as well. Okay, what I'm going to go do now is mark on my pattern piece here the line that I need to fold this to and then iron. So let's go make our mark so that we know where to fold it. Okay, the pattern instructions want you to fold this yoke over a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to measure 1 inch here with my ruler and I'm going to put a mark. I like doing double the requirements so that when I get over to the iron, I just have to line this up. That's what helps me. Instead of putting my line here at the 1/2 inch mark, which I can't see when I fold it, I always put my mark there. I'm at 1 inch. So there's one side. Let's do the other one. I'm using a friction pin for this. I have a love-hate relationship with friction pins. That's what this one is right here. Let me see here. It doesn't say friction on there. It says friction on this. Yeah, friction. They're supposed to be heat erasable. Sometimes the marks can reappear though, so I tend to only put them in places that they're going to be completely hidden eventually when the garment is done. Okay, let's go to the iron and we're going to, like I said, we're going to press this a 1/2 inch, and then what we're going to do is bring this so that it covers up the stitching. We're going to fold, press, and then we're going to fold it again up here and press again. So let's go do that at the iron. Okay, so let's iron here on this one. Make sure you don't have both pieces underneath each other. I've laid them here side by side because you don't want to erase your line that you created. Okay, so the instructions say to, do this fold, and then what I'm going to do as well is go back to my trusty tape here, and I'm just going to lay some here in the seam allowance. And this again is going to kind of eliminate my need for pins here. Pins could make this kind of bulky. So let me take this off. There is kind of an art to working with this stuff. It's a little bit finicky. Okay, so there it's laying. You can barely see it there on the seam allowance, and I'm just going to fold this over so that the yoke piece is covering that stitching, and I'm going to press. You do not have to use, obviously, this Steam a Seams tape. It's just really, really helpful in holding your fabric in place for me to go in there now and top stitch it. Okay, so let's do that exact same thing with this one. What we want to do now is go to the sewing machine and do a top stitch just right along the edge there, very close to the edge, to finish off this yoke piece. A side note for top stitching, I like to put my stitch length at 3, and you're of course going to be top stitching from the right side of the fabric, so you can see that I have my fabric right side up here, and we're just going to sew fairly close to that folded edge there. And this is what your top stitched yoke should look like. I'm going to trim my threads and move on to the other one. I'm going to give these one more press from the right side here just to set my seams. And then according to the instructions, we're ready to attach the front to the back, but I think what I'm going to do is go off the instructions a little bit and go ahead and hem while I have these two pieces of fabric just flat instead of in the round sewed together. They're a little bit easier to hem. So I'm going to go ahead and do my hemming now, and I'll take you guys along for that as well. First step to my hemming is to use my serger to finish the raw edges of the bottom of each skirt. I'm going to pause here for just a second. Notice that my blade is on, but I'm not cutting any of this fabric off. I am leaving it on to cut away any fuzzies. You can see that the fabric's kind of fraying there, so the knife is getting that, but I'm not actually cutting off anything when I'm serging here. And there's the serged edge of my hem, and then I'm of course going to turn it up and then stitch it down. According to the last step here on your instructions, they want you to hem this garment at 5/8. So using my technique of doubling that and marking that line, I'm going to make a line here at 1 1/4. 5/8 plus 5/8 is 1 1/4, I believe. So let's do that here. Okay, you can see my orange line there. So when I go over to the iron, I'm going to fold this up to the orange line and kind of ease it in. There is a curve. Forgot to mention that, you guys. There is a curve here in the bottom of this dress, so doing them separate will help with that as well. Helps to get your curve not bunched up or any puckering or anything. So just be gentle with it. Be patient and kind of do your ironing here gently, and it'll turn up. We'll get it going. I'll show you. Okay, let's take our two pieces to the iron now. And like I said, we're going to press up, and I'm probably going to use some pins. You could also use that stay tape at this point if you really wanted to. I haven't used it in hems yet, but it's a good idea. So we'll see. We'll see what we want to do when we get over to the iron. I think I will go ahead and try this here. This is that, of course, the hem tape that I've used everywhere during this project. And I'm just going to put it along here. I'm not going to do one big continuous piece of it, but I will use a little bit here and there, and that will help hold it down a little bit more. So let's go ahead and iron that. Okay. Okay, there is our 5/8 seam allowance on one side here. What we'll do is we'll go to the sewing machine next and top stitch that down. I'm going to let my ironing board cool here for a second, because if I do not, my marks from my friction pin are going to erase as soon as they touch this hot ironing board. So we'll do that one here in just a second. So let's hem the bottom here. I'm just going to tell you how I'm going to do it. Obviously y'all can hem however you want to, but what I've done is laid my fabric, my dress piece right side up, and I'm going to align this edge here with a mark on my my presser foot plate here. This plate right here has some measurements, so I'm going to align that, and then that's going to catch right in here inside this seam allowance. So that'll sew that down, and that'll be a good hem. You could always do it from the back, but I always feel like a hem looks best when done from the front, if you can keep your eye on, you know, on the target, on a straight line. So we'll see how we do here. I might end up doing 2 lines of stitches. We'll just see how it looks when I get done with one. Stitch length is on a 3 again, like I do for all top stitching. Trim away all of our little fuzzies, and that is a really good looking hem. Actually, it's invisible on this side. It's went into the serging stitches. I probably will just leave it as that one row of stitching. I don't think I need to do another one. Very pleased with that. Okay, last step for our hems here is to set our stitches. So we're gonna iron our hem here. I'm a big fan of ironing, if you can't tell already. I just think that ironing after every step makes for a very professional finish. So, okay, so our hem is done now. I believe the next step on the pattern is to connect the front and the back pieces. So let's go over to the cutting table and work on that. We are ready to do step 6 on our instructions. We're going to attach the 2 dress pieces together at the side. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn, leave one right side up so that you can see the pretty side, and then turn another one face down. So pretty side together, or right sides together, and you're going to pin and sew along these 2 side seams here, and that's the step that we're doing in step 6. I'm going to go ahead and finish my edges as well, and I'll be using my serger for that. So let's do that here together. We've got our 2 sides pinned now. I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew those with a straight stitch at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You'll notice when I'm serging side seams to finish the seam, I am probably cutting off a little bit, just a hair. I don't want to get into my stitching row, but this could be a little smaller too for a seam allowance. So sometimes I'll trim off just a hair. Next step on the sides is to iron them, of course. Set your seams. And then the last step that I will do on the side seams is to secure these little tails that's been left by my serger. I'll show you how I do that. Not saying it's a technical way to do it, but this is how I always secure the tails of my serging thread. So I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Go ahead and press both sides. And let's go back over to the regular sewing machine and I will show you what to do with these little tails. This is my method for handling serger tails. So I have my fabric away from me. I always have my fabric going this way in the machine because it helps feed right here. If the feed dog is already on some fabric, it helps it grab it a little bit better. So I'm going to take that tail and I'm just going to tuck it up. Let me zoom in for you guys. I'm going to tuck it up like this, just laying it up into the serging seam line there, and I'm going to kind of just let it lay there, and I'm going to bring my presser foot down on top of that thread. And then I'm going to set my stitch length to a zigzag, and then I'm just going to zigzag right over that line, that tail that I tucked up in there. And that holds my tail down, and it's hidden right there in the seam line with a zigzag stitch. Show you what it looks like when you get done sewing it. I trim these off, these tails, just to make it look a little bit cleaner. There we go. Okay, that's how I finish the end of a serger tail. So let's do that 3 more times here for this garment. And that was the last step for sewing our 2 side seams together. It's now time to move on to our last step in making this dress, actually. Your dress should look something like this, with raw edges still here at your armholes. We're getting ready to do that last step, but otherwise your dress should be finished. And the hem is laying very flat like we want it. We don't want any bunching or puckering. So yeah, looking very good. And we are working on the last step now. The pattern gives you some instructions. Let's see if I can pull it out here. On these steps here for preparing your own straps. So they're going to walk you through making bias binding yourself on this pattern. I'm not going to make some self-made bias binding. What I'm going to do, like I said, is use this store-bought blue bias binding that I already had in my stash. To do this, to use the store-bought one, I'm going to open it up, and then I've got my pattern piece here. This is the pattern piece that they're going to give you for your bias straps. The instructions say to cut 2 straps 2 times this width. So this is to save paper and room. The pattern company has left this smaller, so you need to make a strap 2 times this width. So I'm going to unwrap some of this, and we're going to go to the size 7. I made the size 7 in my dress, and we're just going to double it over on itself. So I went ahead and cut one there. I had to hop off for a call. So this is what one is looking like. It's doubled over, like I said. Let's do the next one. Just lay them down and then double it over to the size 7 line. Make sure it's too short. Probably a little better if it's too long as opposed to too short. Okay, yes. All right, and then what I'm going to do is just cut it here. And there we go. Plenty of length was in that store-bought bias binding, by the way. Here's what I have left over. So plenty of length for the straps. I have 2 cut at 2 times this length. Again, we doubled it over, so it actually makes a strap this long. And let's attach those straps now to our dress, and that is our last step. Okay, I'm going to show you my method for putting on bias binding straps. I like to do the sandwich method, and when I say sandwich, I mean I'm going to open this up just once, and I'm going to sandwich this raw edge in between my 2 pieces of fabric, and I'm going to sew down this line. Now you can attach it, of course, by opening all of these up. So you would open it up until it's just one layer, and then you would sew here, and then you would fold this, fold it, and then sew it again. I'm not going to do that method to save time, but you can decide whatever way you want to. So I'm going to fold this in half, my strap in half, here like this, and then I'm going to put a mark here, a small one, because like I said, I don't trust these friction markers. I have a love-hate relationship, like I said, so let's put a small mark right there, and that just tells me that that is the middle of my bias binding. And of course, the middle of your armhole is the seam, so let's match those up. I'll do it this way so I can see my mark, and I'm going to line up my friction marker mark with my seam line, and I'm going to pin it right there. The sandwich part is going, the seam, the middle seam of the bias binding is going to be touching the raw edge. So I'm literally opening up like this and sandwiching it in between here, feeling with my hands and then pinning. So I'm going to do that all the way around this here. You of course want to make sure that you are catching the raw edge and encasing that. So just make sure you're checking your work as you go and be careful that you're catching all your raw edges and encasing them. So one side is looking like this right now. I will sew it down here, edge stitch right here along this edge here at the bottom. And then here at the end, you have raw edges of your bias binding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in once. I'll probably take it to the iron and try to just fold in those raw edges and encase those into the edge of the bias binding. Okay, so I've done one side and I'm going to do this process one more time for this other side. I'm over at the ironing station now and I have folded over and secured all of my tails so that I can enclose all of those. So let's go to the sewing machine and sew these straps on. Using a straight stitch, top stitch length, we're going to sew these straps together, sandwich them together, and we're going to do that on both sides. So let's go ahead and work on that. What our binding should look like attached there at the armholes. The inside is all caught, so you don't see any raw edges. Yep, that is pretty good. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one and then we're going to be done with this dress. One more thing here before we're completely done. I'm going to take my project to the ironing board again and just iron this curve here. I'm using a tailor's ham to kind of work in that curve. Set your stitches. And then I'm going to press the rest of these straps here. I see a tail I need to cut off. There is our dress. Let's tie these little straps up and then we will be done. And yeah, there is our dress. We've got our little ties up here at the shoulders that I have knotted. And I think it's just really cute. The colors look really nice and it was very simple to make. So really enjoyed this little dress. Hope you guys enjoyed this sew with me. And thanks for coming along. And just like that, we have a brand new little dress for a little girl for Project Dress a Girl. I just love this pattern. Like I said, it was very simple and fun, very quick to put together, simple steps, and it was just a lot of fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed this sew with me. I love this cute little dress. Like I said, we made a size 7, and I think it turned out so well. We've got 2 little pockets here. The yoke pieces on the front and the back look really nice, and I think the the bias ties look really good as well, especially with the pockets. So very pleased with this cute little dress. I hope you enjoyed this sew with me. Let me know down below in the comment section if you are making dresses for Project Dress-A-Girl, what patterns have you used? It's always great to look in the comment section and get some ideas for different patterns for these darling little dresses. Because there are certain requirements, it's always good to share what pattern you found with others. I do like doing these sew with me's. Hopefully I'll have another one for next year. I like featuring a free pattern that anyone has access to. So that's why I went with the Oliver and S popover sundress for this year's dress. You can just purchase it there on the website for free. Absolutely. It doesn't cost you anything, and you have a really darling little dress for Project Dress-A-Girl dresses. Okay, and that's gonna do it for this Project Dress-A-Girl 2025 vlog. Don't forget to check out all the other vloggers on the vlogging tour. I will link who was yesterday and who comes next down below in the description box. Don't forget to check out the videos. And of course, go back to Madi's introduction video if you need to brush up on all the rules of Project Dress-A-Girl. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday. I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.